Not many people's lives take a turn quite like Jenevieve Cheung's. She grew up in a strict suburban Chinese-Australian family, working hard and excelling at school. Just a few years later, she was performing in China's first ever burlesque club. The dancers just released a memoir called The Good Girl of Chinatown. Monique Schaffter caught up with her inside the risque world of burlesque.
At a 1920s themed bar in Sydney, Jenevieve Cheung enjoys the cheeky thrills of burlesque. Once upon a time that was her up on stage, but she left the showgirl life behind.
That's mini Lavender Chase. I'm just such a show-off, always was. When I look back at photos of myself as a child, there is something quite intrinsic in me that was always a bit of a show pony that performed naturally for people. And, you know, that was gradually repressed as a child and as a teenager, and the priority became just to be able to hold my head up and function in the world and survive.
When I was three, maybe 4.
Jenevieve arrived in Australia at age 4. Her parents had left Taiwan to give their children a fresh start.
There were very few Chinese at that time. We didn't have a strong Chinese community around. What happened was a result of my father feeling really disempowered out there in the real world. He became angrier and angrier in the family home, and he needed to assert his power. And so he would hit us for little mishaps, for not being perfect. I wasn't allowed to take dance lessons when I was a kid because he didn't want people to be looking at my body on stage. So when I became an adult, when I was able to move out of home and exercise my own choices again, I just naturally gravitated to performing, and that was fabulously liberating. It just so happened that my graduation from dance school coincided with this quite massive burlesque movement, burlesque renaissance in London.
Jenevieve married a yoga teacher who was offered a job in Shanghai.
Going to China, I thought that it would be great because no longer would I be part of a minority, but what I found was that the racism was way more blatant. There was one particular job where I stepped in at the last minute to fill in for a foreign dancer, a blonde woman, and they were furious. The Chinese nightclub owners were furious. They couldn't believe that we would have the audacity to replace a white person with a Chinese person. And they made me do the job anyway, and then afterwards they refused to pay me.
Then along came a golden opportunity.
Chinatown was the first vaudeville, variety and burlesque club in China. Our opening number was 6 terrific girls, but only 5 costumes. So Lavender Chase was my showgirl pseudonym in Shanghai. She had to be happy, be seductive, and she had to be a lot of fun. As fabulous as it was, China had a lot of government censorship. So we wanted to create this place where anything could happen and you could really lose yourself.
But about 8 months after Chinatown launched, Jenevieve stopped getting paid.
The club opened in a lot more debt than people realised. The people who were in charge, maybe they were deluded. The whole cast was so wrapped up in keeping this fantasy going that we kept working for another 3 months before I decided that I really needed to pull the plug because I was going down with the club. Like the tableaus form a story in itself, the narrative of my mother.
She came back to Australia in 2011.
There's one exercise which I think would be really good to start with, and I think it's going to be my grandmother's house is a time machine. I remember like coming back and just feeling really overexposed from my time in China, I had this real sense of I didn't want to be looked at anymore. I don't want people to be looking down at scripts so much, but I think if we can just get a handle on those first few lines. At the moment, I'm directing a play called Original, written by Melissa Lee Speyer, and it's based in part on the recent chasm in her relationship with her father. So there's lots for me to talk about and wrangle out with her. I want you to maintain the relationship dynamic. I'm very wary about performing burlesque again because I think it's such a fine line, performing in a way that reduces the body to a sexual object rather than what the pure definition of burlesque should be, which is about rebelling against the establishment by expressing the body on your own terms. I just got caught up in this whole lifestyle that was about celebrating history in this quite tongue-in-cheek way.